This is Patrick Garrett doing an interview with Mr. George Foster, owner of Creative Environmental Solutions in Brooksville, Florida. Brooksville, Florida. Sorry. How are you doing today, sir?
Good, thank you.
Good. Well, I'm going to ask you a few questions here, and just get a take on your understanding of entrepreneurship, your views, and a little bit about your company.
All right.
To start, why don't you go ahead and give me a brief description of what Creative Environmental Solutions is?
All right, we're an environmental, geological, and engineering consulting firm. We conduct contamination assessments and cleanups at gas stations and landfills and things like that. We do all sorts of environmental permitting, water use permitting, and environmental resource permitting, industrial waste permitting, things like that. We do wetland delineations and wetland mitigation, all the way up through wetland mitigation banking, Gopher tortoise surveys and relocations, and threatened and endangered species surveys and management plans and things like that. We do mineral exploration for mining companies, sand and gravel and limestone and granite and whatnot, primarily construction materials.
Okay, and do you have a degree in geology, I would take it?
I have an bachelor's degree in geology from University of South Florida in Tampa and a master's in geology from University of Florida in Gainesville.
Go Gators.
Go Gators.
Okay, so I understand that, if I'm correct, Creative Environmental has been in business since 1994?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you work for anybody else before that in this industry, before starting this company?
Yeah, from 84 to 94, I worked as a geologist and project manager for environmental science and engineering in Gainesville.
Okay. Was there any certain event or idea that prompted you to start this company?
Well, yeah, actually there was not an event, but I became bored in my job, with my job. Just, wasn't challenging, wasn't rewarding. The pay was good and the travel was good. With that large firm, we worked all over the country and even out of the country sometimes. Puerto Rico is part of the country, and Guam is part of the country. But worked there and then the Bahamas and all over the U.S. So.
Awesome. Do you feel that Creative Environmental is a success?
Yes,
and if so, how do you measure success in this business?
Longevity, profit. Still, basically that's it, I guess. Longevity and profit.
Definitely. What, in your opinion, is the most difficult part about owning your own business?
Marketing, finding work, finding projects. I definitely think that's the worst part.
The worst part?
Not the worst part. Most difficult part.
Absolutely.
And I get better at it every year, but still, it's the most difficult part.
So you'd say
I don't like the management aspects of it. I don't like the paperwork, the bookkeeping, and all that. But that's why I have others. So.
Absolutely. What is the main benefit of owning your own business?
Well, nobody can tell you what to do. I mean, and then the potential is limitless. The harder you work, the more you make, the more successful you are. The more creative you are, the more successful you are. You work for somebody else, you aren't necessarily rewarded for your efforts. Sometimes you are, but sometimes you're not. If you work for yourself, you kind of determine your own destiny.
So instead of working for the man, you are the man.
I'm the man.
Has the success of Creative allowed you to branch out and do anything else, any other ventures or anything else you'd like to explain?
Well, real estate investments, things like that. Gilligan's Island LLC. Well, real estate investments probably the only other thing I've really done business-wise. That I wouldn't have been able to do without earnings from Creative Environmental.
Absolutely. So. When you're hiring a management position or you're searching for a business partner, what quality influence your decision the most, or what kind of traits do you look for in a specific person?
personality, attitude. You know, I'm not real careful usually when I interview and whatnot. Not as careful as I should be. And I find oftentimes that I've hired people that, not often, you know, hell, we're a small company and most people have been here a while, but, you know, I don't like smoking. But I got people here that smoke. Maybe if I'd thought about that in the interview process, I wouldn't have hired them. But, you know, who knows? So, you know, just create, you know, enthusiasm, personality. You know, I like friendly, you know, gregarious folks.
So if you're, it's not necessarily an educational background, but more.
No, well, that's a given.
Yeah.
You know, if you're from hiring an engineer, you have to have an engineering degree here. You know, because most people that work here are degreed. You know, I have biologists, engineers, geologists. So, I mean, that was a given.
Okay.
Certainly, they have to have the education. And the experience isn't necessarily critical. You know, I mean, it depends on the job. I mean, you know, I've hired folks. I've just hired one right out of school, a geologist. He's only working part-time now, but he doesn't have any experience at all. And Ted I hired, he's got 20 years of experience doing geology work. So it just depends on the position I'm trying to fill.
Okay. Well, my last question, I guess, would be what kind of advice would you give another entrepreneur looking, you know, somebody going out to start their own business? What advice would you give them? Like if you had one quote to give them or one bit of advice.
I mean, I know that I got off to a running start because I made sure I had people that were going to hire me the day I opened the door. You know, so maybe try and line up some business before you quit your job. You know,
absolutely.
That worked out great for me. I've never been without something to do. But I talked to people before I started the business, and also I talked to a fellow who I respect immensely here in Brooksville, Mr. Bronson, Tommy Bronson. And before I started the business, I talked to him. He's had lots of businesses, been very successful. So I asked him if he would give me some pointers before I set out on my own, before I made the decision. And he encouraged me, said and gave me lots of good advice. And he even came up with a name for my company. I told him that I'd been frustrated trying to find a name that hadn't already been taken. And he says, George, I've been giving that some thought. I think you ought to call it Creative Environmental Solutions. And I don't know if I mentioned in the beginning I had a partner. No, okay, I had a partner. And we're not together now, primarily because of his personality. But anyway, I thought it was kind of a corny name, and my partner at the time said, absolutely not, absolutely not. And I hate that name, that's stupid, we're not going to use that. And but anyway, finally, I told him, I said, look, Mr. Bronson, he's promised to be our first client, first customer. He came up with the name. I'm the president, you're the vice president, so we're going to be Creative Environmental. So anyway, you know, talk to people you know that you respect and that have been successful, get some pointers from them. But I sure like the idea of having something lined up to do right off the bat. Instead of opening the door and then hoping somebody's going to come in and see you.
Absolutely.
That would be very scary. And you know, and again, it was easy for me because I wasn't married, didn't have any kids that I knew of. And you know, it was I just figured, hell, if it fails, I'll just go back to work, probably at the same place. They'd have loved to have me back, and I probably could have gone right back there if things hadn't worked out. But you know, my partner, on the other hand, he had a lot at stake. He had a family, a wife, the whole bit. You know, so it was risky for him, but for me, it wasn't risky. You know.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much.
I hope you get an A.
I hope so too. Thank you very much,
Professor, or whoever, give him an A.
Thanks.
You're welcome.